We are here, it's February. Honestly, this is like our most anticipated series usually of the year because y'all are thirsty. And it's kind of to be expected. I mean, it's the age. That's the way it is. That's good. That's great. That's actually pretty normal and healthy. If you're not thirsty, then there may be an issue. But I know that when it comes to like dating, relationships, sex in the church, you're like, this is the last place you think you get any good advice, right? It's just like, you expect to hear things like the devil's going to give you chlamydia, right? Or like, hell won't be the only hole on fire, right? Like, and all these things. But I actually think that this is a place where sex and the whole conversation around it should actually be normalized. But here's the thing as we get going into this whole month, and what I really want to start off the idea this entire month is that actually sex is really easy. I know some of you are thinking, well, not really, because I've tried and I can't. And I get that. But sex is actually pretty, like if you think about it, you can get it anywhere you want. I mean, you just think about porn itself. You get it when you want it, how you want it. I mean, Pornhub, actually, it's interesting. They're the world's most used porn site. Sunday night is the most popular time for people to watch porn. Obviously, church isn't enough for y'all. And the most searched term are moms. Hide your kids, hide your wife, and your mom, I guess, from all your pervert friends. Yeah, the most search is MILF. Moms, I'd like to, you fill in the blank. But seriously, why not? You get sex when you want it, how you want it, with who you want it, and why? I mean, like that's the basis of porn. Like sex is easy that way. You have the ability to masturbate, and which has doubled for men and tripled for women in the last decade and a half. It's for my sexual health, said no one ever who was masturbating. Research shows also that couples who actually sext each other on a regular basis report greater sexual satisfaction in their relationships. You want to hook up? Tinder boasts over 25 million matches a day. And let's be honest, we all want to have sex. And we all want it to be really good. And I actually agree with you. And I think, though, you need to have a pretty good conversation, though, about how we're getting it. And our views on it, because I actually think that we could very easily kind of destroy the idea of it. And at this point, maybe you're probably thinking, like, of course you're going to say that. You're a pastor, and you probably have never had sex. Well, I have 3 kids, so at least 3 times, okay? And so, and you're like, of course you're going to say that, right? You got to be careful with it, and you're like, sex is our thing, and I get it. Listen, I am actually all for you being in relationships, having sex, dating, ththings like that. I'm all for that, but I think, though, that there has to be some really good level-headed thinking about it, and I will say things that you're going to agree with, and I'm going to say things that you're probably going to disagree with this entire month, and you're just going to have to get over it. And that's okay. But I'm going to treat you like adults, though. So all I want to do is inform you about it, and you can take it and you can process it any way you want. That's kind of how I'm going to go about this entire month. Sex is easy, and can I push it a little bit, though? Intimacy is the hard thing, though. I think what's easy is often cheap, and what's hard is often better. What we want is sex, but I think what we all desire is actually intimacy. It's the desire to be known. It's the desire to be safe. It's the idea, a desire of actually being enjoyed. I think we want intimacy. We want something deeper. Even statistically, it says this: young adults want lasting relationships. According to Pew's data, 61% of millennials or young adults, even younger, who have never married would like to someday. A number that hasn't changed since the 1970s. Similarly, 8 in 10 millennials still say that true romance is very important. If we want to even update this more, just reading as well, that when it comes to divorce, that our age group are actually helping those divorce rates plummet a bit. There's a few reasons for it, but one is because we don't want to repeat the same mistakes. We want romance. We want something deeper. And like I said, I won't tell you what to do or what you shouldn't do. My job, I think, is just to inform you. Interestingly enough, in the United States, the states that have the highest amount of STIs, highest amount of teen pregnancies, highest amount of sexual issues are the ones that teach very little sex health education outside of abstinence. Abstinence-only states have the highest degree of sexual dysfunctions. And what's interesting, because overall sex, people are having actually less sex these days. Young adults are actually having less hookups, on and on. There's, again, a number of reasons, but one of the major reasons is because there's actually a building awareness to our own sexual health and what it does and what we actually desire and want. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know everything. I really don't. And like I said, you're going to be treated like an adult. You kind of got to take it for what it is. But I work with hundreds of young adults. I've married well over 70 couples. I do a lot of premarital. I do a lot of postmarital. I've worked with people who've been in divorce. I research. I talk with professionals because I feel like my job is to do everything I can to help you do things well. That's where I'm coming from here. And so we wanted to do this series called Title of Your Sex Tape. We want to break up kind of the idea that sex should be something that's not talked about because, honestly, where else are you going to talk about this stuff? And so this month, we're going to touch on stuff. We're going to talk about things. And I want you to feel like you're having a conversation, and we're having a conversation. You go like, yeah, I get what you're saying. I'm there. You at least make some sense. And tonight, the title of your sex tape is Hand Solo. And here's what I mean. I think that if you are not a healthy kind of person, you should not expect to have a healthy relationship. You are what you bring into a relationship. So let me ask you a question. Would you have a relationship with yourself, knowing exactly who you are? I heard that laugh. I think that was just a laugh of desperation. Let me give you a bit of a reality check of where we are today. So I told you about sexting, that couples have this higher or better experience of sexuality. But what's really interesting, in the same study, it shows this, that couples also report, though, far less satisfaction in every other area of the relationship. They experience a higher degree of conflict, much less secure attachment, and lower levels of commitments. That's what we're all looking for long term, to feel unsafe. And so they may have a higher sexual satisfaction, but every other place is suffering. Porn, and whatever you think about porn in this room, so I know there's a bit of debate. Some people feel it's like normal. From our standpoint, we think that it's not normal. The one thing we can't deny is that the reality that porn is actually the way that most young men and women actually inform themselves about sex. Think about it. Outside of grade 5 sex ed, when else are you sitting around talking about your sexual health? It's the awkward conversation with your mom or dad or a random adult, right? When else are you doing it? Interestingly enough, they say that with the rise of porn being accessed, which every year gets higher and higher, a lot of therapists are recognizing in relationships they're seeing a higher degree of violence and violent sex. And those actually tend to be some of the higher viewed porn categories. There is a decrease in empathy, and there's actually a loss of reality of what it comes to healthy sexual norms. Because think about it. If you could get it when you want it, how you want it, however you want it, if you want to make her or him do that to you, you can look at porn, it becomes normalized to you, and then you get into a relationship with an actual human being. Why wouldn't you expect the same thing? Well, why aren't you giving me a blowjob? That's what I see all the time. And many women are reporting that their partners are telling them or having them do certain things that they're super uncomfortable with, but they feel like if they don't, that they're the ones that are not normal anymore. So of course we think it'd be a little bit normal. Now, I'm not saying you're all going to be, become a serial killer if you watch porn, but I actually think that you could kill love really easily. Masturbation. Sex is decreasing among young adults, but they actually attribute it to a lot of actual futuristic anxiety. They're anxious about, and they've been told for so long, we've been told for so long, make sure you get good grades, make sure you get a job you really love. And so people are actually putting off having meaningful, deep relationships because they're just worried about their future. And so a lot of the church are like, yeah, decrease premarital sex, except what they don't understand is that there's an increase of anxiety. And the reasons for it are actually super hurtful. And they find that people would gravitate towards masturbation because even in relationships, there's a high degree of technological interference, they call it. Or relationships, they get into them, and well, they're mostly on their phones anyways, and there's no real satisfaction there. And so what we do is we do kind of the same thing as porn, where we please ourselves when we want it, how our own terms. And again, that is not how normal, healthy relationships work. They also are seeing research is showing that people who tend to go this way, it actually increases the levels of loneliness people feel. Hookup culture. There's a bit of a myth behind it. There's not like, people think that you go to like university and it's just like an orgy free-for-all, right? It's just like, you want to hook up? I want to hook up, let's do this, right? Like over and over. But it's actually a smaller segment of people. But you think through the Tinder apps, things like that, where it's very easy. Here's something really interesting. Over half of people who use apps to connect with people find that the person they meet has grossly misinterpreted who they were. You ever met that guy who's 6'2", muscular, and they're actually like 4'8", and they drive a huge truck for a very specific reason? Right? A mere 8% of 18 to 29-year-olds actually met their partner online. So what do you do? What do you do when that's the reality? What do you do when we're kind of stuck in that place where it's like, listen, I want to date, but it's a lot harder these days. I want to find someone good, and you're telling me I got to watch who I am, but like, it feels like I just got to keep waiting. What do I do? Well, if you're a 19-year-old Christian, you get married. Dummies. Interestingly enough, by 2012, there were already 18 studies that followed the same people over time. As they went from being single to getting married, they did not become happier than they were when they were single, except sometimes for a brief honeymoon effect early on. If you're lonely now, marriage will not make you less lonely. In fact, it probably would exaggerate your loneliness. If you are unhealthy, being married is not going to make you healthy. It's just going to exaggerate how unhealthy you actually are. If you don't know who you are and you get married, you're going to be just as lost married as you were single. Like, shouldn't you be like pushing marriage? Yeah, I believe in marriage. But man, it's work. It takes time. It's great, but it's not something you jump into quickly. Listen, I know what it's like. I was young when I got married. And processing through what that meant and working through it, and then working with many couples who either wait longer or even start earlier. What's interesting is that the earlier you get married, I think between 19 and 22, the divorce rates of 19 to 22-year-old marriages are like super high before 30 years old. There's actually been a bump, an increase of couples that are getting divorced at about the third year range, especially those who get married at a younger age. Now, I'm not trying to freak you out about it, but I actually am trying to freak you out a bit about it. Because here's the problem. We think marriage is what we actually really want. But the problem is that you never really focused on, are you the person that you really want to be to? Are you healthy? Are you okay? Because relationships, the best kind, start not by finding the right person, but by working at being the right kind of person. And that's kind of what I want to help you out with. I want to help you towards that direction. What can I do to make sure that I'm moving in the right direction? I'm not saying you got to be perfect. You won't have everything figured out. And when you do get married, you're going to be like, did I make the right decision? I mean, like, there's no perfect result that's going to be like, now I'm ready for marriage. But there are some signs for you to figure out, am I going the right direction? And that's kind of what I'll help you out tonight. And we are a church. We do believe in the Bible. We do believe that there is an incredible blueprint of life that's given to us. We believe that God cares for us and made us. And right at the beginning, there is this book called Genesis, which literally means beginning. And the first couple chapters, I want to highlight a couple things for you that I think are super important for us to know. And the first is this, that when we were made, we were created with care. It says that, so God created human beings in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. Notice it says he created them 3 times. Whenever you see something like that in the Bible repeated 3 times in kind of one sentence, it usually means it's trying to highlight something very important. It's highlighting this, that you were created by God on purpose and with value and dignity and with an immense amount of care. That every single one of you is created with this, you're created with the sense of, I am worth something super valuable. That every human being has its own dignity and value that needs to be owned and needs to be honored by other people. The second thing we learn about this is that we are created with longing. It says, and the Lord God said, it is not good for man to be alone. I'll make a helper who is just right for him. Now, the word helper there's some people in the church who say that that just means that God made a woman to serve man. That's actually not what it says. The Hebrew there says that actually an equal parts person who they do life together. The sense that there's a cooperation and we cooperate together. The idea is this is not good. We were created with a longing to be in relationship. I was be like, how do I not be horny anymore? Do you really want that? Like, do you think there's just a magic switch that you get married and you're like, yo, horn dog's out, right? Like, it doesn't happen that way. You're thirsty for a reason. You want a relationship. You were created with a longing. You were created to be together. And the part of this, and I guess this is the hard part I'm trying to wrap my hand around, and to do it for you and to help you, is like, if we're created for this, why does it seem like I gotta wait so long? Right? But I was created with longing to be in relationship. The third thing is this, is that we were created with responsibility. It says this, then God blessed them and said, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth and govern it. Reign over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, and all the animals that scurry along the ground. Basically says this, the world and what God has created you for and in, you are meant to steward it well. We were created with responsibility. Basically, our example is our witness. Even in our sexuality, we are meant to steward it well. So we were created with care, which means high dignity, which means that's why I have a bit of an issue with porn, is because it dehumanizes the person on the other side. And in the end, it actually dehumanizes you and turns you into an animal of instinct, rather than a human rationally being able to understand what I'm doing is exploiting another human being. You're created with longing. That's why I think that no one should expect to get something from someone else and to violate someone else's security based on what you want, because not only does it dehumanize the other person, but because you forget to realize that they are also people with longings. And if there's no cooperation or mutuality, then it's just abusive and it's wrong. We're created with responsibility. I honestly think that you should lead the way in how we do relationships because you are the witness. And would you want someone else's relationship to look like yours? So what do we do? Can I encourage you? I'm going to just ramble off a couple things that I want to help you kind of secure in your life to make sure you're doing this the right way. The first is this, is practice intimacy. So there's this book in the Bible called Song of Songs. And anyone who says that the Bible doesn't talk about sex or navigates away from it has not read this book. Because, yo. And you are my private garden, my treasure, my bride. Blow on my garden. That's a euphemism for oral sex, by the way. I'm not even lying, it is. And spread its fragrance all around. Come into your garden, my love. Taste its finest fruits. This is a book about lovers. And some of you are like blushing because you're like, I would never say that. If my mama heard me say that, she'd slap me, right? Like, this is awkward. But that's the point. The point is, can you see the intimacy? Can you see the romance? Can you see the longing? Can you see the ability to be vulnerable there? So many of us have such a hard time being vulnerable. We say we want vulnerability. We say we want to be real, but we can't be honest what we're feeling. And we would never say this. You'd like Justin Timberlake can say it, and you'll love the song. But I wouldn't say that. And I mean, honestly, you probably shouldn't go up to anyone and say that. But you know what I mean, right? Because so many millennials rely on texting to have conversations, experts say they tend to have in-person communication problems. A common thread throughout many of these conflicts is how couples don't know how to communicate their needs and desires to their partner, clinical psychologist Dr. Ryan Hooper said. They are communicating a ton of information to each other through social media and texting, but many of the most important things are going unsaid. We will never create true connection and true intimacy without vulnerability. Interestingly enough, I said this last year, I don't know if you were here and you remember this, but they're saying that less and less people are actually undressing in locker rooms. I remember once I was in the gym and I was in the locker room and a guy was blow drying his butt hair. And I'm okay with seeing less of that man. But they're saying, because so many people are like on Instagram and they're viewing themselves in relation to other people and they're recognizing their own flaws, that people are actually a lot more susceptible to kind of stay hidden, to not be so vulnerable, that even in locker rooms, people are undressing less and less and more uncomfortable with nakedness because it's just like, oh my goodness, look at all their blemishes. They're gonna see all my blemishes. And and it's a really, really good sign of kind of how many of us feel today. And we feel like we're being vulnerable, but really we're kind of just projecting a fake sense of self. Here's the thing though, a real, deep, and fulfilling relationship will feel like a bit of an undressing. An undressing of your mind, of your soul, of your body, of your insecurities, of your fears, of your history. That can be really scary, that can be incredibly intimidating, and it can be like super awkward. This is why I think sex can be the lowest form of intimacy. Sex is easy. What we desire is intimacy. So when a couple says that they're just like, they're doing really well, and there's just, especially, a lot of couples, they start off hot and heavy. And they think that they feel really, really like secure and they feel, I tell them sex is easy. Good sex is built by intimacy. And intimacy can only be had with security. And this is why, as Christians, we do think sex is best within the confines of marriage. That marriage covenant is so important to us because there's a sense of security and futuristic love in it. See, when you say your vows, it's not, I promise right now to love you. It says, I vow and promise to be loving, to be faithful. And so this incredible physical vulnerability is backed by a vulnerability of and a security of trust. Of going, no matter who you are and what you are, I'm committing my life to you. And that's why it's so important to us. And whether you're there or not with us, that's okay. But I just want to give you a bit of an understanding of why we talk a lot about sex really being in the confines of marriage. It's the safest place where it could happen. So what do we do? How do we build intimacy? How do we practice it? And I'd say this is especially important for guys because girls have this emotional immaturity and rise a lot faster than guys ever do. And it's not like a pull on guys, it's true. That's kind of happens. Guys usually, like, they can watch something together and they feel like we're best friends. I didn't even know his name, but he's the best friend I ever had, right? Like, and that's where girls, there's a lot more emotional maturity. There's a lot more relatedness. And so they grow up doing that a lot more. Guys don't as much. And so when guys and girls get into relationships, sometimes there's that awkwardness. It's like, he never talks. And he's like, she never shuts up, right? And I don't know what to do. And so for guys and girls, it's important to practice intimacy. And guys, I know this can be really awkward because you're like, who's a guy friend I do this with? But let me ask you a couple questions. Ask yourself, why aren't you honest? What's driving your hiddenness, your insecurities? What are you scared about someone finding out about you? Name it, own it, work on it. It's really important. Ask yourself that question. What am I hiding? Second, practice vulnerability with someone you trust on a regular basis. Find someone who you feel like they're kind of like your lightning rod people. You can kind of tell them anything you want and they just absorb it all and they don't tell anyone. It just stays there. Practice being vulnerable with some of the most insecure places of your life in your heart. Guys and girls, practice it. Practice kind of the one-on-one, face-to-face conversations. Texts and DMs, those are all convenience. Those are not connection. So practice face-to-face. Honestly, weird research. They did this study where if couples or if people were meeting together at a table and there was a phone on the table, it affected their levels of communication. When the phone went into the pocket, it slightly increased their ability to communicate. When the phone was outside of the room, the levels of connectedness shot through the roof within the first 5 minutes of their conversation. Practice face-to-face with somebody. Practice talking. Practice doing that. Because, dating is that. Dating is the ability of finding out what you like, what you don't like, and who you're with, and what they're like, and it's what it is. And I'm actually a really big proponent of dating. I think you should date. I think you should try dating certain people and seeing what they're like. I think you can do it without huge amounts of regret or anything like that. You can do it safely. Dating can be a really good thing. Practice intimacy. The second thing is asking yourself, am I a wreck? Galatians chapter 5, verse 1, this is a New Testament book in the Bible. It says, it is for freedom that Christ set us free. Some of you are like, you got nothing more dirty? But just hold on. Stand firm then. Do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery. What we see in the Bible constantly, what God is wanting to do is always move us to greater levels of freedom. That's what he wants us to do. So you need to ask yourself your question, how much of your everyday is in your control and how much of it is out of your control? So let's think about your emotions. How much of your life is controlled by your impulses, your bitterness, your anger? The choices, are they yours or are they someone else's choices? What about your money? Every area of your life, how much of your life are you in control of? Do you have uncontrolled lust, for example, which is driving you to, this is what drives to sexual assaults, to violence, to being pushy with people's boundaries, is because you have uncontrolled lust. You can't get a hand on it. What about your mental health? How's your mental health doing? Could it affect your relationship? Are you doing okay? There's a point where you have to figure out, I gotta work on me getting okay before I actually give myself the okay to be involved in someone else's life. Here's the thing. When you get involved with someone in their life, there's an automatic risk, not just to you, but to what you'll do to them as well. And would you want to be in a relationship with yourself, knowing what you know about you? And so even when it comes to porn and masturbation and all that stuff, is that actually leading you to greater levels of freedom or more levels of slavery? Is it helping you in your lust problem or is it making it worse? I guess that's a rhetorical question. And let that sit in you. Have your friends told you, you got an anger problem? Own it. Just own it. Because here's the thing, when you get into a relationship and you want to be long lasting, you commit to protecting that other person. And so are you doing what you can to do your own checks? It's not about having a full mastery of your life. No one has a full mastery of their life. No one does. But it's just about having good self-awareness. It's constantly working at knowing who you are and who you're not. And asking yourself, where could I actually be going blind in my life? Or else you run the risk of actually becoming someone for another person, making someone else into something that they're not. Know where you're at. Know what season you're in. That's the best you can do for yourself and for the other person that you engage in a relationship with. Know yourself. Third, it's figuring out, am I holding on to too much baggage? Proverbs 3:24-25 says this, you can go to bed without fear. You'll lie down and sleep soundly. You need not be afraid of sudden disaster or destruction that comes upon the wicked. What it's talking about is you can rest in peace in a sense because you know that you've not done anything, that it's going to destroy you or going to come haunt you the next day. Listen, everyone has baggage. If you were raised by anything, you got baggage. Everyone's got baggage. And I'm not even just talking about sexual baggage. I'm talking about like financial baggage. You've got emotional baggage. You've got, probably 10 cats you adopted, right? Like y'all got baggage, right? Like we all have baggage. But how do I know when it's actually getting bad? It's when it's overtaking your quiet life. When it's kind of haunting you at night. Someone said it this way: any behavior that seems to overpower as well as any urge or motivation that seems to uncontrollably drive us is a possible sign indicating the presence of baggage. What's haunting you? When it's all you see, when it's how you see yourself, it's how you see your current or how you see your future relationships. It's those people who are like, I'm gonna have a great marriage because my parents' marriage sucked, right? That you got baggage, you gotta deal with that. That's not a good reason to get married. I'm gonna do this because of that. That's, if you're reactive, you probably got baggage you gotta deal with. Will it cause disunity between you and someone else? If you told them about it, are you afraid it would create some chaos? You gotta deal with that stuff. Will it cause someone to compromise? Is it a compromise between you and your relationship with God if you claim to follow Jesus? Some of you here are like, and I hear this a lot. It's like, Thomas, I'm not a virgin. How is someone going to love me? I'm like, probably the same way if you were a virgin. For a long time in the church has used virginity as, in a sense, a bit of like a power play, that you're worth more if you're a virgin. That's coming from a lot of patriarchal kind of understanding. And people, like, they go to the Bible for it. And you need to know, at those points, women kind of were looked at as property in the ancient Near East, which, just so you know, we ain't living there anymore. Now, as much as we really, really encourage people to steward their sexual activity within the confines of marriage for safety, it's not because it makes you better as a Christian. It doesn't make you less than because maybe you're not a virgin. And I think our understanding has to change a little bit on this. That we live life, we make decisions, we own those decisions. Sometimes we wish you didn't, sometimes we wish you did. And there's a sense where it's just like, I can't be honest with it. I'm telling you, if you can't be honest in a relationship with someone about your past, I don't know if that person's worth having a relationship with. And if your degree of, I have to be careful when I say this. If your judgment on someone is purely of their sexual past because they're not a virgin, yet you're looking at tons of porn, what's the difference? If they're not a virgin but a great person, but there's a virgin and you're a terrible human being, I think we need to level a little bit here and understand that it doesn't make you any more, any less Christian, whether you're a virgin or not, or even a human if you are or not. If you're dealing with any human being, including yourself, you're a mixed bag of cray-cray. All of us. And it's owning that. It's understanding that. And it's being honest about those things. It's important that we talk about history with each other. If you're getting to something that's going to be long-lasting and futuristic. If you've got trauma, it's really important that you work through some of that trauma. So what do? Seek help from friends, counselors, get help. Seek forgiveness where you can, and seek wholeness, spiritually, physically, emotionally. Just speak wholeness, or seek it. Also, stop lying to yourself. Song of Songs. One night as I lay in bed, I yearned for my lover. Never mind. I yearned for him, but he did not come. So I said to myself, I will get up and roam the city searching. And somebody was like, that's a great idea. Then scarcely had I left, then when I found my love, I caught and held him tightly. This is a story about someone who's infatuated with their lover. that their whole mind and life is wrapped around this person that they decided to do life with. And I bring this up because one of the most common reasons I hear for people not committing is this: what if there's someone else out there that's better? It's a decision paralysis. It happens when we're trying to pick a burger at Burger King or we're trying to pick a mate. But what if there's something better, right? It's not uncommon for couples to be dating or even married, and both of them are kind of logged onto Tinder, or some online situation, kind of taking stock of their options. In that situation, the only thing they're kind of looking for is to stroke their ego or something else. For the sake of your own sanity and others, please decide what season you're in and make that abundantly clear. It's the whole situation of you hear it's like the guy's serious, the girl's not, the girl's serious, the guy's not, and that just requires a critical conversation. Listen, playing video games does not make you a bad person. Wanting to be an Insta star does not make you a bad person. But if that's all you want to do, maybe it's a bit of an issue. But at least be honest with where you're at. Hey, you know what? I'm not actually looking for anything serious. I like dating you. I love getting to know you. But marriage is just not in the books for me right now. And so people get super frustrated. It's because they never had those conversations. Be honest with where you're at. And then I ask, do you even know who you are as a person? One of the main reasons why I actually am very hesitant to marry young couples is because I ask this question: is there anything you think this will stop you from doing that you wish you could? Do you have this desire, this career that you have in mind that you want, that you're putting on hold for this? Because I guarantee you run a higher risk of regretting your decision to marry. Do you know who you are? Do you know who you want to be? Do you know that the prefrontal cortex of your brain, the one that helps you make rational decisions, is only fully developed by about 25 or 26 years old? You have till 25 to make terrible decisions and blame it on your physiology, right? Here's the thing: to want a long, lasting, fulfilling relationship with a significant other is to actually want a life of sacrifice. And want being the operative word there. It shouldn't be something that is forced. It should be something that you decide on. It's a mutual understanding that we are going to put we before me. It's not easy, and it's not meant to be for everyone at a certain time. It's when you get there personally, where both of you are deciding, we're committing to make this work. However great it is, however hard it is, we are going to make sure that we're putting us before me. To want a long-lasting, fulfilling relationship with a significant other is to want a life of sacrifice, where it's not about getting what you want, when you want it, how you want it, with who you want it. It's about, what can I do to make you feel secure, loved, and desired? That every day I will repeat these two most important words I can ever say in my life. I do. Every day. That is what we all want. And there has to be certain points in our life where we realize maybe we're just not there. That is fine. That's actually probably really healthy if you guys that self-awareness. Know where you're at. So you know how to gauge, how much do I get into this thing? I'll go as far as saying that this is why sex before marriage can actually be more confusing than good. It can lie to you about how connected you actually are. You've had those relationships, I don't know if you have, maybe you don't have the history, and that's okay, where it's just hot and heavy. And then you realize you got nothing to talk about because it's all just super physical, because there's a level of intimacy where you guys are connected, but when it comes to everything else, you're just not. And your physicality with each other actually, just physiologically, will cloud your understanding and your ability to rationally gauge how connected you are with another human being. Because it takes over. So how do you know? Some people are like, well, how do I know I'm sexually compatible? Well, one, if you've just not had sex with anyone, then you've got no one to gauge it against. It's one thing. But how do you know? I actually think that you talk about it at the right time. You talk about sex. It's healthy to do that. You're just like, I just let my hands do the talking. No, you don't. You talk about it, right? You give it time. You explore that. And so because people are like, how do people just not have sex before it? Like what happens if you just get in bed and it's not good? It's like, again, you're missing the point. It's not about what you get, when you want it, how you want it. So how do we build a life cooperating with each other for the rest of our lives? That builds something healthy, secure, loving, and where we feel desired. There's probably so much more I can say, and I'm already 10 minutes over. This whole month, though, my desire is just to help you have the conversation with yourself or with other people. To let you know the things you're worried about talking about, there's at least one person that's telling you, you can talk with me about it. I want to help you become the kind of people that find that long-lasting, fulfilling relationship that lasts and that is good. But I want to remind you, sex is easy. Intimacy is hard. One is cheap. One is worth the effort. Over the next couple weeks, next week, title your sex tape, Hot in the Sheets, All Regret in the Streets. We're going to be talking about what if your relationship sucks and you don't even know it? How do I gauge a healthy relationship? What does that look like? What are things I should be looking for? I'm dating this girl, this guy, and how do I think about it? Is this ready to go? That's kind of what we're talking about. The week after that, title of the sex tape is There's Always Room for More. And we're going to be talking a bit about how we actually need to involve a lot more people and what does it look like to actually date really well. The whole night is on that. And then the last week of February, it's an open Q&A. It's the things that we didn't get at, and we're going to give you a week to kind of send in your questions because we want to try to do as much as we can this month. If you're here and you've heard me mention things like Jesus and you're like, yeah, how do you mention Jesus when you said the things that you said? And if you got questions about Jesus, we always say that one of the best things you can do is just text the word NEXT to 555-888. And we want to put something in your hand. That doesn't first belong to you. And it'll help you get a bit of an idea, an introduction to Jesus and walking with him, what that looks like. Text us, let us know. Guys, thanks for being here. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was helpful. And I can't wait for this month, guys. Have a good one. See you later.